Welcome to the Community Changemakers Podcast with Suraj Syed of Your Authentic Self-Work and Sue Blythe of the Future Flash Project. Part of the 11 Days of Global Unity, 11 Campaigns for Change, sponsored by We the World, online at we.net, and hosted by the Florida Coalition for Peace and Justice. Welcome to episode 2 of the Community Changemakers Podcast on Interdependence. Today we're joined by Summer Raymer, who is a Compassion Games International co-founder, a creative fundraiser director, and social media strategist. She is passionate about coming together in radically equal partnerships, creating connections between people and organizations who are committed to a kinder, more just, and sustainable world. We're also joined by Kane Barr, a community activist focusing on the narratives and free expression of individuals exploring gender identity. He engages community through arts-based learning exchanges, workshops, and podcasts to help bring connection and understanding around stories that are, at their essence, about the human experience of transition and change. So join me, Suraj Syed of Your Authentic Self-Work, and Sue Blythe of the Future Flash Project as we engage these amazing individuals on the concept of interdependence. And as one of them said in this particular exchange, that this is a call to play together. And playing together is the medicine that this world needs. Not the working, not the collaborating together, not the work that's rooted in ego, but a playful call to action, a striving together that is based on a clearing out of what's not necessary and an allowance to let others help you to help them, and so on through the journey of interdependence.
Very helpful also in terms of not only expressing myself, but also healing myself and others at the same time. This like interconnected, interplaying type of exchange.
Yeah. So that's kind of the intention. That's when I first started talking about there had been this type of expression that we had made within the community, and we thought that when we partnered with We the World to do this 11 Days of Unity, kind of the 11 podcasts, that perhaps that could be the content that would be a different kind of expression that could live on sort of, beyond this with a fresh kind of note of utilization for everybody who listened to it, right? That, is an expression of human, or there's a human expression around a certain type of approach, certain very personal approach to interdependence in practice, right? So the practice carry forward with Compassion Games is kind of a macro level expression, but also the work that Kane is doing here in community as a micro level expression of interdependence in community. So we're just kind of going to get there relative to that. So I'm sure you've been interviewed 1,000 times over, so maybe this will feel a little different, hopefully, I don't know, but it's just a loose conversation. So you okay with that?
I'm already like a lot more excited about this conversation by how you're setting the context. So, and Sue probably knows that a little bit more about me. I love not really knowing, and I like deep, meaningful, and what really comes through without necessarily a plan, and not in the river of the unknown, I'd like to say. And so I can feel the field already that's coming in. So thank you. I'm excited about what we're going to talk about.
Wonderful. So how about we get started? I can build in some of the other stuff because as Sue and I had discussed, I'm not sure how we're necessarily going to tag this in terms of the intro. So we could do that in post-production. So I think it's just easier to get into the conversation at this point. And relative to interdependence, right? Kane and I had a conversation in setting up for this podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about work that we'd recently done together. And Sue, all of us had kind of done this work, Summer, that we had recently done a community-based exchange that was equal parts dialogic exchange as well as a performance-based reflexive space that we created. So the easier way that is that we have a colleague who's unfortunately not here today that does playback theater. So when people making expressions about their experience in this particular space, which happened to be transgender justice. That's what we were focusing on a few months ago. Then dialogic exchange was really informed by that, because everyone found themselves in the narrative, not only relative to the head space, but also to the heart space, right? And that was a really important place to get to. We're not doing any playback work here today, but I think we're all to enter into that heart space, as you've already mentioned, right? So getting into the river of the unknown, as you mentioned, Summer, I was thinking, Kane, if you could reflect just on the beginning of this journey that we've begun together, right? So as you came into a space where you carried years of development approaching real interdependence with other individuals, even through very difficult spaces of navigating identity in which there were doors closed for you, there were aspects of your expression that were subverted, whatever the case may be, as you entered community space to start really working with others across a plurality of perspectives. How's that been going? How's that felt for you?
It's actually been really an unexpected and amazing type of a journey, you know. Like again, like you're in this like sea of uncertainty, and it's surprising on how the dominoes fall, and watching things come together when you've been in a storm for a very long time. And it's like, you know, a hurricane, you know, you have your 48-hour warning, you got to go and prepare, you have all this, you know, you have all this stuff that you need to do. And then the storm hits, and then you just don't know like what's going to happen, because you're bunkered down inside a house. You don't know what the outside world's going to look, and then the storm is gone. It's you know, the tail end, and then you have the opportunity to open the doors. And I've lived through several hurricanes, and so to open the door and find out, oh wow, the screen from our pool is broken into, and like you see like pieces of fences, trees down. It's just, look at all of this stuff, like not even realizing like what kind of stuff this is, and then having to comb through it and go and like, oh wow, I didn't even notice like some of the things that are being discovered out in the streets. And so it's definitely a type of growth, and it's a type of seeing and digging deeper of who you actually really are.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting that you describe it that way, because in my experience and in my practice in working with groups in community summer, or whether it's with individuals in kind of an individual counseling space, it's always the pattern disruption that really shakes loose a real sense of authentic expression or real awareness of self, whatever the case may be. Tell us a little bit about that in terms of, you know, this remarkable work that you've done with compassion games and other work that you've done throughout your career. How did you find yourself to that? I mean, was there or yourself into that space? Was there a similar kind of experience where there was a great moment of dissonance that kind of precipitated this kind of certitude and awareness? This is where I want to go. This is what I'm meant to do here. Or did it kind of emerge in a different way?
Well, I just want to, before even going into my story, Kane, thank you for sharing from that deep well and space that you just expressed, and of what that's like. And I'm a visual, I see a lot. So how you were explaining the, you know, coming out the door, and I think that I can relate in my own life and my own journey of how the compassion games has come into my life is a very, very interesting, auspicious day where I had a plan of a day ahead of me. One of my best friends, we were going to get together and have a day together, and she canceled on me about 30 minutes as I'm on my way to her house. And I had this like desire, I think on a deeper soulful level, that I was really wanting to surrender in the unknown, that was something I was working with that day. And so as the universe sort of gave me this really interesting kind of gift of like, well, wait, wow, my friend just like canceled on me. What's that about? But the opportunity that, you know, outside of the plan and kind of opening that door, like you said, and seeing things not quite how you envisioned, and allowing the universe to take me a new direction that day. And there's more to the story, but I ended up at a place called the Fremont Market, and some people say, and felt really guided from a deep, like my body was like guiding me, more than my heart, my mind. It was just like something was taking me somewhere. And I ended up, I don't know if you have ever seen, they have this was kind of new at the time, it was about 4 years ago, but those poets at like a farmer's market that you go up and they'll on the spot write you a poem of about whatever choice, and they do it on a typewriter, right? So they can't like edit it, and they can't like go back, and I mean, it's like you commit to what your words are on this little piece of paper. So I got up to the poet, who really felt like this sage shaman to me, and he's like, well, what would you like to have your poem about? And I said, surrender. And this beautiful poem, and he wrote it within a couple of minutes, and I wish I had it here actually, because it's really at the texture of what we're talking about. I know where it is, so maybe at some point in time I can grab it. But what it like opened for me was more of like this like lusciousness of opening versus like fear. I felt it opened me in this softness of myself, of where I was going that day. And anyways, I ended up, the next place that I went after this beautiful poem and was an art activist booth that was called the Compassionate Action Station. And they had prayer flags that you could paint, and they were going to be a part of a peace treaty signing that was protecting the Salish Sea, and where I live is a very significant water reserve that is beyond, Canada and the U.S. It's, so there was a peace treaty signing that these prayer flags that were going to be a part of. So I was there and I was painting these prayer flags and enjoying the experience. And lo and behold, John Raymer, the founder of Compassion Games, had come to the station, and we started talking, and we had actually met a year before on Whidbey Island where I live. But we really met, like there was a feeling of stars kind of aligning in this experience I was having with him. And anyways, it was this kind of, I would describe it as, and this has been what I've wanted from my life in all domains of my life, to open up like a flower. And there was a time historically before that where I wanted to just press open the flower petals and get to the beauty of it and see the flower. But there was this experience of building a beautiful relationship, and then the relationship with the Compassion Games, that really felt like one of the most organic unfoldings of like really appreciating like each petal slowly unopening, and maybe even petals closing at times and opening again. But there was this very natural timelessness and of experience that happened about 4 years ago. And it was during the September Compassion Games. It was a compassion game that I was involved in. So, yeah, it's a little bit about story.
It's a beautiful expression, Summer, because several of the things that have been said are very, they're not relevant, but they're almost central to each of our experiences, right? The idea of synchronicity as it emerges, recognizing those moments when everything is aligning and kind of surrendering yourself to the organic flow of that particular opening rather than, and I'm the biggest culprit here, forcing it every single time. I've been sitting probably trying to rip petals off of flowers and but rather than appreciating the natural progression. But I know, Sue, through this idea of appreciating synchronicity as it emerges in its time has been especially freeing, especially opening, especially fulfilling in this past couple of years that I've known you, right? That as we've come together and developed a real sense of interdependence, even through difficult spaces, right? And coming to those kind of understandings, negotiating value that's shared value, shared expression, shared experience in ways that aren't usually what you find at conference tables with staff meetings and whatnot. How has synchronicity emerged for you in a similar fashion as Summer and Kane have both said? And how have you recognize its presence in your life?
Well, I feel like the appreciation of synchronicity came to me when I was at a very difficult time in my life, where I was going through difficulties in my marriage and trying to figure out what do I do. And when something came my way, I could feel it. You know, I just knew, this is good. This is what I need. And so, and I would pursue that and stick with it a while. And that was, you know, one faith base, and then another with 12-step programs that I came into a whole new appreciation and just felt like, oh, well, there's this world of things happening here. And so I kind of gave myself over to that, and then was introduced to the Baha'i faith and hearing the teachings of the oneness of humanity, unity and diversity. It just was another, I'm home, you know, and it just felt, I just knew immediately this was mine. And so since that time, I have been just aware and open, I think, and just so appreciative of every single interaction that I feel is that synchronous. You know, we are coming, we are all connected, we are doing this thing together, learning how to live together as a human family, and it's all so exciting to me. And so I've come all the way through, and I think what Suraj is appreciating is that I have created a character, and I call her Serendipity Sage. And she just revels in this every time something happens that is clearly serendipity. It just delights her, and so that's how I've come to appreciate serendipity.
Yes, and there are many sages, correct? So there is Synchronicity Sage, Serendipity, and several others as well. So it's being responsive in identity, right?
And that actually is coming from the place of my elderhood that I am learning to appreciate in new and wonderful ways, and being able to kind of draw from my life experience and be able to share that with younger people. And maybe I can help one or two to appreciate the synchronicity in their own lives.
So for me, what was of particular interest relative to this project was to be able to use these nodes of connection, right, that we're forming today, these types of expressions that we're making, and engender in those who might receive this lived experience, this wisdom that is born of pain and sacrifice and compromise and awareness and release as well. Release of aspects of self that may not be the best in service of where we're heading, and you know, any number of permutations of that kind of thinking. And so what was really important for me approaching this was to have at its core an expression of being able to engender some sense of activating a community-based activism, advocacy, whatever the case is, and activating it not in a sense of saying, here's how you do it. Here's step 1 through 3, 4, 5. You know, this is the 10-step program to achieving successful community activism. It was more so about finding yourself, finding your heart in the work, and then doing something that's been really important for me. It comes out of my own personal pain, which is the ability to not become stagnant or rooted in the inertia of ego-based conflict that may arise. To say, look, if we're working in a space of unity, peace, interdependence, compassion, then let us show them. Because even in this community, doing work within community around issues that many of us may all have a heart for, I found conflict where I did not expect it to be. And it is something about that idea of approach. I mean, this like an old proverb of, you cannot put new wine into an old wine skin. And perhaps for me, being in this space and sharing with all of you is to find a different idea of a new wineskin in which to put all of this awareness that ironically isn't new. It's thousands of years old. So, you know, as you mentioned, Summer, the idea of coming to a person who was representative of being something like a sage shaman. I mean, Kane himself has found his way into that kind of practice and work. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found your way into that work?
Well, it all came about as this need for a holistic team, this need in preparing for my next journey, my next phase in life, which is something that I have wanted for a very long time. And so, I came to Gainesville as, oh, I'm going to go and do grad school, and I have this program and all this stuff, and I have these plans. And then it turns out, no, that's not the reason why you're here, Kane. You're here to heal. You found doctors that you needed to get you to where you need to be. And so in part of that, I did the whole multidimensional approach, and that was through chiropractor, since I've been in several car accidents, primary care, so that I was able to get the hormones so I can transition from female to male. Was a massage therapist to help prepare my body for the top surgery that I was planning on having. Also a therapist to help me overcome the post-traumatic stress disorder and the anxiety and the depression and the body dysphoria that I have been having. And then also went to changing how the way that I ate, it also into exercising, because I wanted to have my body as healthy as possible so I can accept the surgery that was coming. And so in doing so, I stumbled upon a shamanic healer. And that was another way after I had just gotten out of surgery. My massage therapist, who's also a Reiki teacher, recommended me to go to a shamanic healer. And so since then, I've been doing ancestral work and I've been doing karmic healing. And when we first started, we were working on soul retrieval. So retrieving the bits of myself that I allowed to leave or was forcibly taken from me. So I was collecting myself, my internal power, finding my sense of being, helping me to emerge from a cocoon and to become a butterfly or a moth. And then right now I'm in the process of my wings drying out and then being able to fly and continue the cycle of life. So that's kind of where I've come into shamanic shamanism. I've learned how to journey. I've also recently gotten into Tibetan Buddhism, so doing meditation practice. So I've just been on this like really interesting, intense spiritual journey, as it turns out to be.
Yeah. So there is this really important expression of translating value into practice, right? To be able to situate what it is that you find to be of great value and situate it in a personal expression that then shows itself to others, such as myself, that I completely became enamored of your experience, the challenges you faced, and the grace with which you have approached those transitions, right?
Thank you.
On many levels, right? On many levels. Speaking to that, Summer, the idea of your doing a great work in this world of harnessing many different narratives, many different stories, many different hearts, and coalescing them into something like the Compassion Games. How have you thought through that? How do you harness the hearts of individuals and bring them together into a community expression and growing into a global expression, right? And that is the ultimate hope. I know Sue values that greatly as well. What are the opportunities there? What are the challenges in moving forward in that respect?
Well, what comes to mind, I think, is how the Compassion Games began, so I'm still like receiving everything too that Kane just shared. I live in a very multi-dimensional way as well. So there were certain things you shared that wow, you got a lot going on there. I'm excited for you. And I think one of the things that I think is so unique about the Compassion Games, and I think it's exactly part of the medicine that the world needs, is play. To play together, some of the things that are maybe the hardest is working together. I think we all want to collaborate together. It sounds really great. And it also is some of the hardest things I personally have ever done, is collaborating with other humans, with their other ideas and their other triggers. And yes, the ego work and the inner work that comes along with that is so much more intense and beautiful, I would say, than to go about it alone. And the story about how the Compassion Games began is still alive in how we approach working with communities all over the world. Seattle, Washington was affirmed to be the first compassionate city in the world. And John Raymer, my beloved husband, by the way, as of the last 2 weeks, we just got married, which is a whole other story of magic unfolding in my life right now. So he wrote a letter to all the mayors in the U.S. saying, hey, we'd love for you to also start a compassionate city movement. And a particular mayor, Mayor Fisher, if you all have a chance to get to know him, he's a stunning sage and very, very good friends with His Holiness the Dalai Lama of the Tibetan Buddhism, I know that Kane brought up. So he wrote a letter and said, we are the most compassionate city in the world, and we are so compassionate that we will actually fly out to Seattle to help you beat us. We're so compassionate, and it would be so till proven otherwise. So just really dropped this awesome hey, competition of the most compassionate city. And so it started with this beautiful humor and also engaging way of building a bridge. And John was, at the time, I think it was around the time that the Hunger Games was really a big deal. And so they were like, well, how are we going to track? Really, which city is the most compassionate, which really that part doesn't matter. But the part about it is it organically unfolded the idea of the antidote to the Hunger Games is the Compassion Games. And the main actress that's also in the Hunger Games is from Louisville, Kentucky. Did I say Louisville? Did I actually say that part? I didn't mean to not. But Louisville, Kentucky, the mayor there is who I'm talking about. And so there was a whole connection there with the main actress being from there. And that was about 7 or so years ago. So it started with 2 cities, Louisville, Kentucky, and Seattle, Washington. And I believe Louisville kind of beat Seattle, but either way, it started and catalyzed a movement of many compassionate cities. So here we are in 2018, and the organic unfolding of over 400 cities worldwide. There are continents that have affirmed being compassionate continents. And it's not just city organizers, it's also businesses, it's also families, it's organizations, it's individuals that are participating. And so it started with 2 cities, and now there have been over 5 million people that have been impacted by the Compassion Games, and over 40 countries that have participated. But there's a call to action that's playful and using competition, but really the thing about it is it's getting to the root of what competition actually means. The root of competition is competere, which is actually to strive together. And so this idea of the intention of creating peace on earth by 2030 is it's not that I'm competing against your awesome, compassionate team in Gainesville, Florida. It's that we're working together. So it is creating a web and an opportunity to be a global family of playfully competing, and we call it co-opetition. Wow. So and connecting to the personal is, my middle name is Joy. I think one of the most important and most significant things to me is that we have fun while we heal and we build compassion and work on the things that our communities really need. Is how do we actually access joy and play and that child that's within all of us, as we do this very, very serious work, is how do we do it with a light heart, So that's what really allures me. That's part of the magnet for me to the Compassion Games is I have a very, very joyful spirit, and I feel this work is my soul's work. So
it's so meaningful to me for you to make this kind of expression and also have something that is a very tangible vest for expressing this kind of value in terms of the play, the games that we can draw together as you said, with the spirit of children, as a playful child. Even with my own son, the most that he's ever learned about anything is while we were actively playing together and kind of having the deepest conversations, the deepest interactions, and the deepest understandings in that particular space. Now, 8.5, and he has that direct access to that playfulness, and thankfully he keeps me there as well. But I've also occupied spaces in which I very much lost that, right? I lost that, especially, well, I don't know, I guess I'm safe to say it here, but in the university space, when I worked there, it's not as easily accessible, right? And situating value around what I have found to be qualitative but remarkably important human experience, like compassionate exchange, like interdependence, what we're speaking about, it's not something that's in those spaces easily quantified, right? So the work of situating value has been really important in this community and moving through other spaces as Sue has been doing throughout this state. So Sue, same question for you, as Summer so beautifully responded to that, in terms of opportunities and challenges to establish a heart of compassion within this work, to also speak to the varying kind of aims that the Earth Charter initiative brings, such as caring for the community of life, peace, unity, justice. How you come across opportunities and challenges in a similar way to kind of situate values amongst our partners?
Well, I guess going back to that time when I was first coming into an awareness of spiritual values and principles, that I found singing and dancing with my children. And I just wanted them to be happy, and I wanted to be happy. I was having such a terrible time in my life. I thought, so where do we go from here? And I really dedicated my life to teaching peace through children's songs and going into schools and helping to identify children from other countries that come together. We could do a little group work and come up with a song and a dance that they wanted to do in an assembly. And that kind of work just became my favorite thing to do. And as I I was living in the Keys at the time and moved to Gainesville with the intention to teach peace in the schools. And so I started that process, and again, being so open to the serendipity and synchronicity of things, I just found myself being attracted to people who were working in that hard space and finding them and finding what's our commonality. How can we do something together? How can we play? Essentially, that's what we were doing. And for, 20, 30 years, that's what I've been doing. And finding it in a job that I had with the county, where I was an education coordinator for recycling. Let's take care of our, let's not have so much stuff, and let's take better care of our earth. And it was about that time that I learned about the Earth Charter. And it was like, oh my gosh, here's a statement of everything that is dear to me in almost poetic language. And so in the year 2000, I said, well, then I'm teaching the Earth Charter. For all these years, I've been doing that in many different ways. And the Florida Earth Charter Initiative now is connecting people, especially through interfaith work, interfaith climate work, and collaborating with people at the Florida Gulf Coast University, where the Earth Charter is being celebrated this year, especially because the university has been an Earth Charter affiliate for 10 years. They are also the only Earth Charter affiliate university in the U.S. So we're thinking that during these next 2 years, and the way I'm playing my game with the Compassion Games, is that we're on the road to 2020. So what can we do together that none of us can do on our own? And we're having a wonderful time with it. And these are part of our process now. So it's really a fun thing to do, and helping build, helping to increase the cooperation through co-opetition is what I'm all about. We have developed a Future Flash Climate Challenge that is priority one of the Sustainable World Games. And so we're going to be able to show clearly what that means. Right now, I'm the only one who knows. We're going to be able to show clearly by 2020 how to be the Sustainable World Games.
So, Summer, Sue, and Kane know about this to a certain extent, and Sue's actually witnessed it, but there was a recent work that I and some other partners that we all know have been engaged in around immigrant justice, especially that is very relevant to some sort of ugly realities within this community and surrounding communities relative to undocumented members of our community, migrant workers, farmers especially. So we entered into that space with a colleague who, like Sue, her name is Ann Kinnebrew, and she does performative-based work. Both Sue and Ann, for the past couple of years, really drew me out of a very, as you said, in quote marks, collaborative space into a more compassionate exchange of human experience and understanding that really precipitated a lot of great work. And through that arts-based work, through the work of, I mean, it's another expression of play in the sense that we were actually doing a performance on stage and then brought the community together around what they experienced in that performance, where they found themselves in that story. And we have found that in a space like that, as well as in a space like the listening post work that we did, that Sue and I did with Kane and some other members of the transgender community, that the engendering of an understanding that comes out of finding yourself or finding parts of your experience in someone else's story, that really precipitated an amazing connection that, as you said, was organic. I mean, the flower petals were opening on their own, and we've seen that happen in space and in community, and we've seen that opening occur. So Summer, have you found through the work that you've done directly or the work that you've done with so many partners all across the globe, what kinds of real, how should I put it? I mean, the expressions of interdependence, when they really hit that peak and that very sublime moment emerges, what have you found those to be? How have you found, or, you know, even ones that really stick out in your mind and in your heart in terms of expressions of interdependence that you've noticed through the work with Compassion Games?
Well, on some level, my role has many dimensions to it with the Compassion Games. I do a lot of different parts of the business and the fundraising, but the thing that comes to mind as you ask that question is more on the coach aspect, is I've more coach teams, and it's really starting with a conversation of getting to know each other. And what I find is really, really natural, and I think it's very similar to way Sue's genius, is that when I'm having a conversation, I'm thinking naturally about where, it's almost like I see a map of the universe. And as this person is revealing who they are, I see connections like that already exists in our network. We have something called Sign that's also kind of a new part of the Compassion Games, this a sort of social enterprise, I would say, and it's really about synergy. It's about synergy and building a space for networks upon networks to really support each other. Sue is a new member. And so it's like, as an example, I'm just going to say to Kane, because I feel like I'm getting to know Kane really well here, right, is talking about, it's like I see so many ways that connections that will support in a way like the potential, what is the biggest vision, the biggest dreams of these individuals that I might be talking to, and how I can help expand those wings so they can fully fly. So I look in that space as I get to know this being, and it's always different, or this organization, what's missing, what is it that they're really trying to do in the world? How do they want to be of service to and connect to actually creating peace on earth by 2030 as well? What is it? What are some resources or ways that we can work together if it's not financially based? How can we create win-wins, is how I look at everything. So it really is so different depending on, but that's sort of what comes to mind for me. Is I often love to really get into people, like to see deeply. And I think that one of the things that I also love in Sign, our new synergized impact network exchange is we have these social media cafes that happen every month, and it's a Zoom conversation, and we're also going live, and it's a very transparent conversation, but it often does get very, there's an emotion quality to it. It's a space where people, I feel, can be very honest and real, and I do believe that it's healing, and it's thinking about how Sue and the serendipity is that if we can walk away from these conversations or these collaborations or whatever it is that we're doing together, walk away and feel better and like more life force energy, don't feel as tired, feel more like it's more possible, whatever it is I'm trying to do today, I think that we're doing a good thing. So,
beautifully put. In fact, beautifully put, again, in a very synchronous and very organic way, because coming into this space, Kane, I mean, you've had different challenges that have emerged, different things that you've had to really shore up your spiritual reserves to engage. And yet you came here today during a very difficult and busy time with the understanding, as Summer just expressed, that this would be an empowering experience for you, that it would be that would help you identify more resources that you could use to move forward. So, fail, success, work.
A++.
A++. There we go. You and Summer. Interdependence has been created.
Yeah. One thing that I haven't mentioned that I think is also really important about the compassion games is that we do have a metric system. I thought one of you said something about the quantitative, right. How are we really tracking our progression? What have we done and how are we progressing? So one of the things about what makes the compassion games a gamified experience is we have this scoreboard and compassion impact metrics, which is how many volunteers, how many hours of service, how much money raised for local global cause, which is optional, it's not required, and how many people served or animals being served. So that's part of what the metrics of it, and I think it's also part of what grounds where we are and how some communities or organizations can say, hey, my goal by September 2019 is that in my organization, I want to see, 100,000 more hours of service happening. And using the compassion games is a fun way of tracking it over time, as we have these 3 global experiences of compassion games in action for the world to play. It's free. And so September, and then there's one in April and one in, didn't need to go back and forth, but one in February. And it is kind of like a, back to the Lotus thing, but it's an opportunity where it's like a lily pad. We get to really track the compassion or, what the fever is on the planet on a biggest scheme, and also where we're at in our goals and in our the most local as we can get to. So, Kane, as you're building your work and working and maybe empowering other people in the transgender community, maybe having, a team that plays the compassion games can be part of, what you do, possibly. And I know Sue's got some really awesome things that he's plugging in as well. So, but yeah, it's like it keeps us connected. The great work that we do together, the great moments we have, that we continue. We have a place to continue doing this good work and reflecting. That's a part of the compassion games as well, is reflecting what happened, what empowered us, what inspired us about these great things that we are doing in our communities and in relationship with other communities in the world.
So one thing that I like to do in terms of calling it a learning shot, right? A takeaway that has really impacted me through this exchange that we've had today, and one that we can each kind of speak to for ourselves. For me, it's the idea that an awareness, tuning in to when synchronicity really emerges, such as with today, right? This particular moment was coming, and all the realities emerged earlier today with all sorts of stuff coming up, whatnot. But I had this awareness that whatever was going to happen today was going to be something that if I endured to come to this space, it would be incredibly, it would feed me, right? And it has definitely, most certainly done that. So that idea, recognizing synchronicity, the emergence of synchronicity as a step towards interdependence, as it has been expressed today, that's my learning shot, right? So one around to close out for today. Sue, how about for you? What's most emerged for you out of this conversation today?
Well, in terms of interdependence, I have so admired the work of Summer and John Raymer for a long time, because I too have a map in my mind. And it's three-dimensional, and I'm always hearing, whenever I meet someone and get that zing, I know where they belong. And so, I mean, it's not where they belong, but where they live. It's like their address, Oh, I know you. I know where you live. You're over here. And I put it now in terms of the Earth Charter, 16 principles for a sustainable, just, and peaceful future. Mm-hmm. Being able to see, because of the serendip and the synchronous, to find the people who are making that interconnection so visible for me, and it is coming to be visible to other people, because I'm finding, folks like Mark Trexler, that is totally devoted to getting the right resource to the right person at the right time. And the way that he has organized all these resources is what I've been looking for. A three-dimensional network. We are interdependent. We are one. We are all connected.
Yeah. Excellently said. How about for you, Kane? For you today?
Kind of like a realization or a reminder of that I'm doing the work even when I realize I'm not doing the work. It's a reminder to continue to clean out those concepts that no longer serve, and one of those is this uncertainty of interdependence, the uncertainty of relying on other people, of co-opting help and service. And it's just a reminder, I'm getting ready to go through this challenging time, and I need to allow other people to help me. And it's going against of what I was taught and what I used to do. So it's part of the old concepts that no longer serve.
And Summer, how about for you? All the burden of wisdom to emerge comes to you now to our wonderful conversation. But yes, what did you find really impacted you today?
Well, I just want to thank you so much for all three of you just being part of my universe. And, before this call unfolded, I was in a really kind of I was tired, and my stories, I wanted, we have smoke from fire. I mean, fires are blazing out here in the Northwest in ways that are so depressing and dark and scary, and a lot of uncertainty unfolding out here. Air qualities that are worse than Beijing. I mean, there's just all sorts of things to really be down about. And I just want you three to know that, like, I just feel like I have lifted something that was kind of like an obstacle or a funk is gone. It moved. And I feel that the being in this spaces with people in a deep way, like this interdependent space that I immediately felt as soon as I popped in here, and I felt the three of you. I was like, this is gonna be good. I just knew it. And I crave this, and I realize it's like water. I need to drink this to stay alive and stay connected to why I am here, is to have experiences like this that I don't take them for granted. And they really are, it's like play and like joy, and just being able to kind of lighten up, which is easier said than done, you know. But I recognize right now, like, wow, I thank you, and I feel like my spine is taller. I feel clearing in my face, and I just feel more here and ready for what else this day is. How I can be of best service comes from experiences like this. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. We look forward to, you have completed the circle for me. Sue has been steadily kind of engendering within me a value for what occurs in my mind as compassionate Gainesville, right? So that is something that she has done for some time, along with some other cities in and around Florida. But Gainesville needs it. Gainesville needs a very distinct awareness of the value of compassionate exchange, as opposed to a lot of what has occurred in this particular space. And I myself, just speaking for me, I know these guys will probably share it as well, Summer, but I look forward to, as Sue would say, playing with you again in the future. So
yeah.
Awesome. Yes. Indeed.
Yes. Game on.
Game on.
Game on.
Game on indeed.
Yeah.